As a financial professional, when I meet with my clients to plan out their retirement, one thing I like to talk about are children. And those are minor children as well as adult children. For my longer term clients, I have almost invariably met their children at some point. And I like meeting the next generation. Why? Well, in terms of retirement planning, meeting your children will tell me a lot about if your retirement plan is going to succeed or is going to fail. Why is that? Stay with me. One of the most underdiscussed and underanalyzed threats, in my opinion, to a successful retirement are children, adult children and minor children. I have seen more kids torpedo retirement plans for their parents than just a little bit. It's almost a cliche at this point. And exactly what happens? Why is this the case? There are five things I've noticed that really do parents in if they don't work with their kids, whether minor or adults, to resolve these issues. One of the first red flags that I notice in meeting children or in hearing parents talk about their children are unresolved issues. And those can be unresolved emotional or psychological issues. Maybe the kid is struggling with addiction. Maybe there was a history of abuse in the family. Maybe the kid is just a ne'er do well and really hasn't gotten their life together. There could be a number of ways that children and adult children can have unresolved issues with the parents, and those usually come up at some point in their retirement. One of the first big things that is a huge red flag to me are adult children, meaning a children over the age of approximately 25, but adult children asking for money for big expenses. Now, I know life is rough out there. Things are hard. It's getting harder and harder for adults to launch themselves in the world. And I do understand and agree with, if resources are available, providing assistance to young adults from time to help get them launched in the world. But then again, there are some adult children who are just ne'er do wells. No matter how old they are, no matter how many times you help them out, they never seem to get it together. And eventually, over time, this child basically becomes a continued dependent on the parents. And unless the parents really have the presence of mind and really have the fortitude to set boundaries on that adult child and tell them, I'm not going to be able, or I don't want to support you as an adult, that adult child becomes a constant threat to retirement. And I'm sorry to say, it's more common than I think many Americans actually feel. I see it a lot in my office, and it happens for a multitude of reasons. These kids often have the best education, best opportunities, went to the best schools. It's just a failure to launch. And they came back after a major failure, lived with their parents, and just never really had the gumption to go out in the world and try again. And it's hard to blame the parents because the parents did everything they could within their power to make sure that they were raising a successful adult. But something went wrong along the way, and this adult child refuses to get back out there in the world and try again after a failed job, a failed education attempt, failed relationship, or something went wrong in their lives. So, a huge flag for me and a huge flag for you in planning your retirement is adult children, and I qualify as adult as anybody over the age of 25, continuously asking for money from parents or soon to be retired or retired parents. The next red flag that I see in dealing with children is the parents are retiring way too early for their kids' life cycle. Now, as society advances, people are starting their families later and later. I do have clients who are having their first children in their 40s, and we have a whole conversation about that because it puts the child at college age during a period of time that most people are considering retirement. And if a parent wants to support their kids' education, and most parents want to support their kids' education, it really is hard to retire and pay for college at the same time. So it means that you're going to have to work considerably, often longer than you intended, to be able to really bring this child to adulthood. I have had some cases where parents, they wanted to retire at 55, and I'm like, you're going to have a 15-year-old at 55. What are you going to do in terms of college expenses and helping this kid launch if you are a retirement, and it's not like a generous retirement where they have an infinite amount of money where they can easily pull money out of this account or that account to send their kid to college, to help their kid with this, to help their kid with that. And when I discussed it with the couple, they had just never really thought about that. Okay, if they want to help their kid go to college, help their kid get their first home, help their kid launch, somebody's got to work. Somebody's probably going to have to work until their mid 60s to make all of that happen. And I think I saved this family a lot of potential financial devastation by just doing the math and asking the questions and saying the timeline that you've put for your retirement just don't add up with what you said yourself you want to help your child with and what you want to provide with your child in adulthood. So sometimes, especially if you're having children later in life, early retirement just comes off the table. And you're going to have to retire along traditional timelines, 65 or even older. Sometimes you're going to have to retire later in life if you have children later in life, if you want to provide assistance to helping your adult child launch. And most parents do want to be able to provide some assistance in helping their children launch. The next one, this is a very tragic one, but it's unfortunately something I see from time to time, so it is not uncommon, but theft and elder abuse. Theft and elder abuse is common in our society. And fortunately, one of the benefits of having a financial advisor or an accountant or a financial professional involved in an older person's life is that we can clock financial abuse. We're trained to detect the signs, and by law, we must report it when we see it. I have called Adult Protective Services on clients when I saw possible signs of theft and elder abuse. And the sad thing is that probably 85% of the time, the theft and elder abuse comes from an immediate family member, like a son or a daughter or a niece or nephew, or it comes from a close friend. Rarely is it a scam situation where someone is sitting in Nigeria or India and trying to scam this person. It's usually someone who has been known to this person for a very long time. And I think theft and elder abuse is becoming more prevalent in our society, which is absolutely just gut wrenchingly sad when it does happen. But it's one of the benefits of having a financial professional that know, likes, and trusts you. We can detect the signs of financial abuse. And I ask people to take an honest assessment of their children and their family. Is there anyone in their immediate family who's likely to perpetrate financial abuse? I need to know that pretty early on. And sadly, some parents do tell me, okay, look out for XYZ. XYZ has a history. And sure enough, XYZ crops up. But at least I know what I'm dealing with in XYZ, and I know XYZ's history and what they're trying to get out of the situation. If you have someone in your family who has the potential, you think, for theft or elder abuse, and this could be a person with a history, a criminal history, it could be a person with drug or addiction issues, or it could be a person with just a history of abuse of other people. You need to create provisions around that. And that may be getting a financial power of attorney that has the ability to step in if you are not capable, to make sure this person isn't stealing from you or isn't abusing you. But my point is, if you have a history of someone in your immediate family who has abusive tendencies, you need to be proactive, not reactive, and make sure that you get systems and paperwork set up before you start displaying signs of incapacity, to make sure that this individual doesn't step in and start abusing you when you are at your weakest. The next way that kids can ruin retirement: expectations about inheritance. Boy, this one really burns my potatoes. I do occasionally deal with clients, and I know their kids, and the kids have basically constructed their entire adult life around this inheritance they will receive someday. And it's difficult because they probably will receive an inheritance, but the adult person, needless to say, really shouldn't be constructing their entire adult financial lives around money that they will receive at some indefinite part in the future. And it's hard because the child has an almost entitled aspect about it. And sometimes, in worst case scenarios, the child will put pressure on the parents not to spend money because the child is feeling like the parents are spending their money. And that's when I have to step in and say, look, no. And some of my most valuable moments as a financial advisor have been in being an intercessor in family dynamics where you had a adult child that wasn't necessarily financially abusing their parents, but they were really getting close to the line. And the parent doesn't have the type of relationship where they can step in and put boundaries. And I had to be that person for my client to be like, look, kid, no, this is your parents' money. Your parents will spend the money on whatever they so see fit. This is not your money. Back off. I do encourage parents who have good relationships with adult children to talk about inheritance when they are of sound mind and body, and they can set expectations up front about what the children will get and what the children will not get. That doesn't mean that's how that's going to play out once the parents dies, but I think it quells a lot of anxiety and puts to rest a lot of questions that adult children may have. And it's also a great opportunity if there are discrepancies in the inheritance. One child is getting one type of account, the other child is getting another type of account. The parents can actually explain why they structured it that way. A good example are IRAs and 401ks. Oftentimes, in terms of inheritance, it makes sense to leave that to the lower earning child and leave the Roth account or brokerage accounts to the higher earning child and to equalize it between the tax structure. The account balance in the 401k may be much larger than the account balance in the Roth or in the brokerage account. And then children may feel some kind of way that they were being targeted by their parents for something different, but it's no, they were trying to equalize the taxes between you two. And having the parents explain that and why they did that makes a huge difference and can diffuse a lot of arguments after the parents are no longer here. Making sure that you set expectations about inheritances with children up front, I think can be important if you have that type of relationship with your kids. The final one, number 5, 5 ways kids kill retirement. Grandkids. Parents inherently feel different about their grandkids than sometimes they feel about their own kids. And I have seen situations where parents weren't necessarily, and they'll tell you they didn't necessarily have the best relationship with their children or they weren't necessarily the best parents, but they're going to make it up for lost time with their grandkids. And they want to do everything under the sun, from paying for college to paying for first home to paying for summer camp to paying for everything for the grandkids. And the grandkid is an infant and hasn't even asked or set this expectation that their grandparents pays for all of this. Sometimes even the kids don't have really an expectation that their parents pay for all of this. But I often get the sense that the parent is making up for lost time or trying to recreate the relationship that they didn't have with their own children due to various reasons via their grandkids. And it can end up being a very expensive mistake. Worst case scenario is the kid uses the grandkid to manipulate the grandparents. And I have seen cases like that, which is very sad and very tragic because oftentimes the grandparent has to cut off not only the child, but also the grandchild. So it can create some really warped dynamics. And I do suggest if you want to help out your grandkid, it's very noble. And if you're in a financial position to do it, then go ahead and do it. But you set the parameters of what you can and can't do with your child. Okay, I can do a 529 account. We're going to put away $5,000 a year for the 529. I can help out with summer camp. I can't do every year. I can do every other year. Whatever you want to do, just set those parameters up front so that you don't end up basically giving your retirement to your kid and your grandkid and splashing out at each and every opportunity on your grandkids to make up for some past misadventure in your family. Also, note this about grandkids. People rarely have one grandkid, and what you do for one grandkid, it binds you to other grandkids because if one grandkid got a lot of money from grandma and grandpa or whoever, it can really lead to a lot of resentment if the other kids don't get the same deal. So the question is, okay, you can do this for one grandkid. Can you do this for 4 grandkids? Or there's no way you can do it. Sometimes there's arrangements where grandparents do more for one set of grandkids than the other, simply because the parents of that one set of grandkids don't really have any resources, whereas the other grandkids are very well set off and very well comfortable. Sometimes, as long as the person communicates that and why they're doing that with their children, that can actually turn out really well. But I typically ask people if what you're doing for your first grandchild, are you going to be able to do this for all your grandchildren? Or are you able to communicate with your children why you can do this for this grandchild, but not for the second grandchild that comes into the world? So there you have it. 5 ways that kids will kill your retirement. If you found this information useful, please share and subscribe.